are involved in sexual relationships outside of the context of marriage, the emotional intelligence tend to be less compared to those that are not in that behavior. And how even those that were involved in this type of behavior, as they stop the behavior, combined with lifestyle changes, they actually increase their emotional intelligence. This other one on how going against your conscience has a negative effect on your mental and emotional health. Okay? This other one on how spiritual material, specifically reading the book of Proverbs, has a preventive mechanism against sexual relationships outside of the context of marriage. And this other one on vitamin B12, on how vitamin B12 deficiency is very similar between vegetarians and non-vegetarians. This other one on how diabetics that are eating animal products are worse in their glucose control compared to diabetics that follow a plant-based diet, a vegetarian diet. Interesting study. And this is the one I wanted to show you a picture, the clinical case that we're documenting how his diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity were reversed. And this is a patient. In a matter of a year and a half, that's the before and after. And this one is published on American Heart Association Journal. Again, you can find those studies and many more that were asking me again for the address, in the address of the bottom. ResearchGate, as I tell my friends, is like the Facebook of researchers. Okay? So ResearchGate is a page that researchers put their research there, and anybody can access that research. It's free. You don't have to pay absolutely anything for it. You can also subscribe, so anytime the researcher comes up with a new piece of research, you're able to hear about it, and you can go and visit it. Again, you don't have to put the whole thing. If you put Eddie Ramirez ResearchGate, you should be able to arrive there to that particular page. I'm also co-author in the book Rethink Food with Dr. Hans Diehl, Dr. Neil Barnard, Michael Greger, Caldwell Ensenstiel, and Joel Fuhrman, among others. So, joint health is a very important topic because it's a very common cause of disability. And it has an effect on the quality of life. It's not the same with somebody that doesn't have those joint issues. So we'll be learning this afternoon, what can we do to prevent, first of all, ending up with joint problems? And number two, if you already have them, a few hints of what you can do. So, as I mentioned, arthritis is the leading cause of disability according to the public health body here in America, the CDC. And about 11% of people report having joint issues. And about 20% of the people have a diagnosis by a physician of issues with their joints. And you can see here that it's closely related, the number one, arthritis, with the number two, back and spine problems. Very closely related. Very common causes of disability, not being able to work, not being able to do all the things that you do. And this is the interesting thing. Joint problems are increasing. See, here in 2003, you can see that the problem was severe, especially in a little bit on the south and a little bit there on the Midwest. But please notice the latest statistic, also from the CDC, shows that this state how common are joint problems. Very common. A big cause. And if you notice, 34 to 46% is in that range of people that have joint issues. And if you notice, what area is that area that is in black? How do we call that area? The South, or we also call it how? The Bible Belt. And there is a little theological link to this, as many of the inhabitants of that part of America believe that the counsels on health from the Bible are not applicable today. Have you heard about those things? So pig eating and these type of things. And there's a relationship with that. In fact, this area of America has the most heart attacks, has the most strokes, has the most depression, okay, and most diabetes, okay. And again, there's a theological implication. That's not the only factor. I'm not saying that's the only factor, but it does has an important factor there. So, what can we do to keep our joints healthy? I could summarize things in 3 words, which is diet, exercise, and water. But we'll be talking a little bit with more detail about each one of them. We have in a wonderful book, if you don't have it, ask for it. I'm sure we can give you a copy, called The Ministry of Healing. There's a powerful quotation there that says, disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from the violation of what? Of bad luck, no? Of the laws of health. So, as there are laws in nature, like the law of gravity, you can go to the roof and say, oh, that's not true. The law of gravity doesn't exist, I'm just going to walk out of the roof and it doesn't exist. Well, even if you believe it doesn't exist, still is there, okay? And you're going to get yourself in really big trouble. In the same way, there are laws of health that even if you're not aware of them or you disregard them consciously, still can have a negative effect. And that's why I'm glad that you guys are here this afternoon, because we're going to be learning about some of those important laws and how not to break them. So this is a model of a knee, and it is a wonderful piece of engineering. If you start seeing how they make things like robots, you know what they do? They go and study this because you cannot improve above this. So the engineers that do the robots and these type of things study this, and then they try to replicate them in their models and so forth. Same thing, if you're trying to make a hand, there's no better model than a hand. You cannot invent a better hand than the one that we have. So those scientists go and explore the hand and the details and so forth, and then they try to replicate as much as possible. And we have multiple joints around our body. And our joints have the ability to help us move. Without the joints, you couldn't move. And it's interesting, if you have ever had a car for a long time, you will see that the car starts giving you trouble, a few years along the road. And, you have to change the shock absorbers and to change the alternator and so forth. So the body has the ability to have some sort of regeneration. But when we abuse that system, we can get ourselves in really big trouble. So one of the things that our cartilage needs is nutrition. See, your cartilage is made of cells. And every single cell in your body is going to need two very important things. Number one is going to need nutrition. Number two is going to need some oxygen. Okay? And at the same time, cells are like little motors. And a motor, if you notice in your car, is throwing smoke all the time. The same thing is happening with your cells. Your cells are generating what is called products of metabolism waste. So those products of metabolism waste, they need to be removed. And if they're not removed, they start accumulating in the area, and that starts damaging the cells, and that starts to cause trouble even at the level of the knees. So about the nutrition, what do we need there? Well, this is the issue. You have two different bones, and then at the end of the bone, you have this whitish material that covers them. If you ever seen a leg of a chicken, for example, you can see that white part. Now, this is a problem. It's not red, it's white. So if it's white, it means there is little blood that gets there. And that's the reason why cartilage get damaged so easily, because there is not much blood that gets there. So we need to do things that help get that nutrition and that oxygen to that area, and that helps remove that waste products. So there is no blood supply to that area. In other words, there's no blood vessels going there. So how are we going to bring good nutrition to that area? Well, we have some blood vessels, very, very small blood vessels that get to that area. And the body, by using different signaling, helps open those blood vessels as much as possible. And as the cells are coming near the area, they are able to send that nutrition, that oxygen there, and they're able to pick it up. But it's not something that happens automatically. We need to, first of all, make sure that there is a good blood flow. See, there is a relationship between cholesterol problems and joint health. People that have problems with their cholesterol end up encouraging what is called atherosclerosis, which is the closure of the arteries, some plaque that starts building up. And unfortunately, some of the most delicate blood vessels are in that area of their joints. In other words, when you are having the wrong type of diet, these are some of the first blood vessels to close. Is that going to be bad or good for your joints? And that's why it starts representing in joint problems. The person starts telling you, I have this back pain that doesn't go away. Well, there's blood vessels that nurture the cartilage that is in your spine. And if you are not getting that proper nourishment, then the cartilage cannot be maintained and starts to become deformed. Also, if you start closing those arteries, even a little bit of plaque from cholesterol and other things, the ability to transport those nutrients to the cartilage cannot take place correctly. So that's why your cartilage health is very much dependent on how clean your arteries are. So this is actually a two-way street. So we need to send, as I mentioned, nutrition and oxygen to those cells inside the cartilage, and the waste products need to be removed and sent to the circulation so they can get rid of. So one thing that you're going to need plenty of it is water. See, even you can see this in sports. Usually people get injured later in the game. As there's dehydration and there is less water in the joints, there's higher risk of injury. So if you have too little water, let me ask you this. What's more important, to keep you alive or to make you move? Well, to keep you alive. So then the body starts working on priorities. So if you're not drinking enough water, the body is going to start to try to get water from anywhere it can find. Some of it is in your joints, and it's going to start using that water instead on your more important life and death systems, and moving yourself, that's something secondary. Okay? So by having chronic long-term dehydration, you can affect your joint health. Because your cartilage is between 65 to 80% liquid. And God made it like that because it is a shock absorber. So the water keeps those cartilage nice and soft to be able to resist all kinds of damage. So the water is the shock absorber part of your cartilage. And at the same time, as we mentioned, you need to have that nourishment back and forth, and the water is a key ingredient to keeping your blood nice and fluid so that interchange can take place. So, yeah, it's all connected. The bursa also needs that type of water because inside the bursa comes from the Latin that means a little purse or a little bag. And what's inside of that bag part of it is water. So when you are not drinking enough water, the products of metabolic waste start to accumulate that, and those products start damaging the cells that are in your cartilage. So some people drink all kinds of things except water. Can you wash your dishes with Coca-Cola? No, isn't it? You need water. So make sure that water is what you're taking. Because if you're taking other things, the body needs to process those other things and then finally absorbs a little bit of water. So you may have drank quite a bit, but actually very little water makes it there. Or if you're eating things like with caffeine, that actually stimulates diuresis, that actually stimulates urination. So you actually end up throwing more than when you actually retain. So make sure that you are drinking enough water. Water is what your body needs. Another important part, and I know this is a little bit anti-American to talk about exercise, but you need exercise, okay? Things are very easy in this country. See, I spent some time in Tanzania, Africa. And as I started observing the people in Tanzania, it was in a very rural area. There was no electricity, no running water in that area of Tanzania where I was. I started observing that people there are in constant physical activity in order to survive. You know, it's not because they're reading the latest magazine on exercise. And if you don't do that, you don't survive, period, you know. For example, if you want to eat something, in the area that I was, there was no grocery store. So what do people eat? You see them there with their hoes working hard the fields day in and day out. In fact, parentheses, this is the way that our ancestors, every single one of our ancestors used to live, in the old days. And then, if they want to cook something, there's no gas, there's no electricity. How do they cook? Well, they need to get an axe, walk for kilometers, cut some wood or something, and drag it home, and that's the way you cook, You want some water, there's no running water there. What do? You see them there in the roads, walking for miles and miles to the body of water, lake or pump or whatever, and then bring the water back. So it is constant physical activity throughout the day just to survive. That's the way that life is there. It's not easy life, Yet they get that blessing of the exercise. Now notice something interesting. In America, even though people do much less exercise, there are more joint problems than in Africa. And let me explain you why. Because exercise is necessary for cartilage health. See, as I mentioned to you, there is no blood supply to your joints. So how does the nutrition actually makes it inside? Every time that you are moving your joints, that is what is stimulating that exchange. Okay. So if you don't move your joints, not enough nutrition gets there, not enough oxygen gets there, and the waste products cannot get out. You need that effect of squeezing. And it's not only moving is good, but you need to have some sort of weight-bearing mechanism. As you are putting weight on your joints, then that exchange can take place. So think about it as a sponge that you squeeze it, and when you do that motion, it draws nutrition from the nearby blood vessels that are around. So if you are not doing enough exercise, there's not enough nutrition there, the cells cannot be nurtured, and then the cartilage start to become deformed. So, what do we need to do? We need to do exercise. A type of exercise that you enjoy. I don't want you to do just once a year type of exercise. So if you enjoy doing it, it's more probable that you're going to be doing that long term. As it says in the cartoon, I tried all the fitness fads, but my doctor was right all along. Walking is the best exercise, says a millipede. Another issue is excess weight in your cartilage. See, think about it like this. Or like this. Do you think that these car shock absorbers are going to last too long if you keep doing this for a long time? That's exactly what happens when you have excess load on your cartilage. See, as I told you, it is an impressive piece of engineering, the cartilage. Yet, when you have excess weight there, day in and day out, the cartilage has a certain engineering limit, and it cannot carry that load for too long. And what ended up happening, as you put that excess weight, we said there's a little liquid in the middle there, you squeeze out that liquid, and the space is reduced, and you start damaging the cartilage more than what it should. So you don't necessarily need to have 50, 100 pounds excess. Sometimes a little bit of extra weight of what you should have is enough for that process to start damaging it. So one of the things that happen, you start creating cell dead. And the regenerating cells of your cartilage start to get damaged. And you can actually see this on an x-ray. Your cartilage should be nice and soft and smooth. And suddenly you take an x-ray there and there's peaks there. Okay? And there's valleys there. Things that shouldn't be in a cartilage, secondary to that excess weight. So you can see here, this is how much space should be between one cartilage and the next one. And you can see how that joint space start to get lost when you are carrying excess weight. And even though it may sound little, it does cause all kinds of trouble because God designed it to have a certain space. And when you have the right space, that interchange of the nutrients is taking place correctly. So you can see here, as the problem advances, one of the characteristics is that the joint space starts to disappear. And the patient tells you, Doctor, I feel that something is scratching there in my knee when I am moving it. Well, that's secondary that joint is frictioning against the other one. And do you think this is painless? No, isn't it? The person starts to complain. Doctor, I feel something is hurting. Anytime I move a little bit, there is pain there. So, what are we going to do this? Well, number one thing, we need to work on getting our weight on our normal scale. Just the fact that you start decreasing your body weight, if you have excess weight, you will see how the pains start to decrease. And now you can see why, isn't it? As you start decreasing the load on your joints, you will see how that space starts to improve and so forth. So the relationship between excess body weight and joint health has been very well documented in many studies. In this published paper, it was shown that compare the very obese to the normal weight person. The percentage of joint problems is a big difference. And you can see, as we were talking about, the reason why. And this is the progression of what has happened with the weight in the U.S. This is back in 1985, being not the dark blue, but the second shade of darkness on the blue. That's the areas of America back in 1985 that had a problem with obesity. 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. They had to put a new classification. Now, those ones that have the dark blue, between 15 and 19% of the people in those states have a problem with obesity. 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, they had to put a new classification. That orange color, more than 20% of the people in those states have a problem with obesity. 98, 99, 2000, 2001, they had to put a new classification. Now, 1 out of 4 people living in those states have a problem with obesity. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, a new classification. Now, 30% of the people living in those states have a problem with obesity. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010 is the latest one. Let me ask you this. Are we getting better or are we getting worse? See, this is a big public health problem. You know, we're not talking about statics and these type of things. This has problems at the level of your health. And now we can understand, isn't it? The issue of carrying that excess weight day in and day out there's more probability that our joints are going to get damaged. So, as we mentioned, we need good nutrition to nourish those joints. It says there, what are some of the things that people may eat that cause trouble? One of the things are refined foods. See, it's interesting how God made food and it was good. But then man puts his hand there and start processing things, and then we get in big trouble. Okay? So there are people that don't eat food. They eat processed things, but not real food. We need to learn to eat real food. So one of the things that happens when you eat refined foods, you create something that is called the Rollieux effect. As Mr. Michelin, do you see the little rolls that he has like that? In the same way that happens. You can actually see this with a microscope. So the blood cells are supposed to be independent from one another. But what ends up happening when you eat the wrong types of foods, the cells go against each other. They create like a little worm, and that's the way they're circulating your body. Is that going to be good or bad? It's bad because when that happens, the cells cannot do their normal job well. In other words, they cannot be delivering that oxygen the way they should be doing it. You can actually see an effect when the cells are like this at the level of their mental health. See, your brain is very much dependent on good oxygen nourishment up there. And when somebody is eating this type of foods on a regular basis, their brain abilities cannot work properly. Your ability to think, to make good judgment, and so forth. So think about it, as the cells are in that formation going there, they cannot nourish that cartilage in the right way. And you can see here, this is a microphotography. You can see here how nice blood flow is there. But when somebody is creating that Rollieux effect, that there's big spaces here where there is no cells and they're mostly concentrated. So the traffic becomes like the traffic of Miami. Yesterday I was in Miami. Man, it's just a big parking lot, to be driving in Miami. And it's not efficient, It's not an efficient way of transporting that. You actually can increase the risk of stroke and these type of things because the cells can clump together much more. So you can see here that just after eating one high-fat food, what is that? Well, things like going to McDonald's and eating a hamburger and a shake. This is exactly, I can go and see this. I remember when I was in medical school, we were supposed to take blood samples between each other from the students. And I remember some of the students that were there that were not in the most healthy diet, when we took their blood, the blood was not flowing properly. Okay? You can actually see the fat. See, that's the way that the things work in your body. When you eat fat, any type of fat, the fat gets absorbed in your intestine and it gets dropped on your blood vessels for further processing. But when you're eating too much fat, that excess fat is being dumped in your digestive tract and then in your blood vessels, and the circulation goes slow. And this lasts for 6, 8, 10 hours. Now, if you were to do this, once a year, well, it's not that big of a deal. But every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the body cannot work properly. Can you see the issue here? With that slowness of the circulation. And you can see this in the brain, actually. When somebody eats that high-fat food, to finally get it off the system is about 2 days. Okay. And if you eat something fatty again, with excess fat, again, the process takes longer and longer and longer. So, remember that refined foods make that Rollieux effect. Things like sugar, we're talking about, things like refined starches, things like excess oil. Be careful with excess oil. And it says there, at our last meeting, it was unanimously agreed to form a cult that worships coffee and donuts. And that's what many people do, isn't it? They have the wrong God worshiping it. Other things that cause problems with your articulations, alcohol. Alcohol creates that Rollieux effect in your blood vessels. Anything with cream, excess cream. So we can teach you here how to do some options with cream, plant-based. It's not the same thing with cream that has come from animals, okay? The cream that has come from animals is high in saturated fat and stimulates that type of formation. So, as we mentioned, when that form of red cells clump together, there is poor nutrition going there. So, we know very well from experience, I have worked in lifestyle centers the last 27 years of my life. And I've seen this over and over and over. People come to our program and they stay with us for 18 days. And in 18 days, they're going to start telling me that they feel more energy. Why is that? Because the blood circulation improves, the brain gets more oxygen, the thinking gets clear. They're going to tell me that they feel that they have now more energy. Same thing. As the fat is being decreased quite a bit from their diet, now the blood vessels can do their job, muscles can get more nourishment, the brain can get more nourishment, and there is clearness in their head. And another thing that patients many times tell us is that their joint pains actually decrease. Why is that? Well, as we were mentioning, as we start helping them shed some pounds and improve that blood circulation, the cartilage work much better. And when you are eating the good types of fats, such as chia seeds, such as any type of nuts, such as seaweed, these are rich in omega-3 oils. And these omega-3 oils actually promote good blood circulation in your body. So it is difficult, isn't it, to eat sometimes the right type of food, because the wrong type of food creates an addictive relationship. See, as a general rule, things that are bad for you are addictive. I have never seen a patient addicted to broccoli, for example. That they say, oh, I have to have my broccoli today. If not, I get a headache or I get nervous. Because broccoli is not addictive. But talk about sugar, talk about meat, talk about cheese. These things are addictive. If you stop eating them, in a few days, you're going to feel like something is missing inside of you, And it's as the smoker. Does the smoker needs to stop smoking? Yes. Now, ask the smoker to stop smoking. Do you think they feel wonderful? No. They cannot sleep, they get nervous, they get a headache, yet they need to stop smoking. So, there is a period in which there is that struggle, trying to overcome the addiction. But once that a period is gone, you are free and liberated from the addiction. Also, stress. When you are under chronic long-term stress, that actually creates inflammation in your body and impairs the correct blood flow in your body. So make sure that you are dealing with the stress in the right way. Too much stress is harmful, but also not enough stress. So you need to find yourself in a good level in which the stress is in an optimal level. In that way, even productivity increases and so forth. So things that create inflammation in your body stimulate the creation of the plaque in your arteries and stimulate that relief effect in your red blood cells. So what are some of those things that may create that? Well, we have these blood vessels that are very delicate. And you can see here that membrane is very, very delicate. But when you're eating the wrong types of foods, that membrane becomes thicker. And we said there is no blood vessel going directly to the joint. So if the blood vessels that are going near the joint are thickened, that interchange of nutrition cannot take place correctly. So among the things that are very inflammatory for you is meat. Meat is something very inflammatory. I'll show you an interesting study in a minute. Also, especially the pork, very inflammatory to you. And dairy products. See, dairy products are very rich in saturated fat and cholesterol. And you can see here in this study, there were two groups of people. Both groups were fasting overnight. One group stayed fasting. The other group ate the following breakfast, which consisted of white bread, cheese, egg, sausage, and some fried potatoes. And here you can see the effect of inflammation in the body. The group that ate that were fasting, no inflammation took place in their body. But the other group, in a matter of a few minutes, inflammation in the body exploded. And as we mentioned, anytime there is inflammation in the body, we stimulate the closure of the arteries and we stimulate the relief effect on the red blood cells. Another thing is food that is too spicy. Things that have aflatoxins. Aflatoxins are basically the poopy of bacteria. So when you make alcohol, what makes alcohol is bacteria, and they happen to throw their waste products there. You cannot clean this. That's the reason why many people, when they drink this, they say, oh, I get this headache when people are sensitive to these things. But be careful. Certain mushrooms could have this. Peanut butter that is too old, beware. I'm not saying all peanut butter, but peanut butter and peanuts that are too old can create those aflatoxins, okay? Because the longer you have it, the higher the risk some bacteria came there and caused damage. And not only that, things that have aflatoxins also increase the probability of cancer of the liver. Well, yeah. As they say, cheese is so bad, not even bacteria wants to eat it anymore. Okay? They leave it alone. So inflammation causes problems with the blood flow and creates problems with the blood walls. So the interchange cannot take place correctly there. So we need to eat things that are anti-inflammatory. So we do that by eating those good real foods. As we mentioned, there's fake foods, there is real food, such as fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, and so forth. That is real food. And especially things that are of a purple color. Any fruit and vegetable that have that purple type of hue in them are very rich in these anti-inflammatory substances. That includes eggplant, yes. And soy products also have an anti-inflammatory properties. So make sure that you are eating a nice variety of foods. See, each different hue, each different color in the spectrum among fruits and vegetables have different properties. So make sure that you're eating the whole rainbow. In other words, the fruits and vegetables that are black, there's some that are violet, there's some that are blue, there's some that are red, there's some that are orange, there's some that are yellow, and there's some that are white. So you need to eat the whole rainbow because each one of them have different properties. It has something that is called the phytochemicals. And there are more than 3,000 of them, of those phytochemicals. Now, the people that like to sell you pills, they would love to sell you 3,000 pills, isn't it? That would make them a lot of money, you know. But you don't need those pills. What you need is real food. That's what you need. Now, another thing with the blood vessel, as we mentioned, blood vessels have the ability to open and close. And when you close the blood vessels, sometimes they close so much and the red blood cells cannot go through. So, when we take things like coffee, coffee has a negative effect on your blood flow in your brain and in your rest of your body. So you close those arteries and then the nurture cannot take place. Let me show you a little clip. You can find this clip actually in my YouTube page, dreddyramirez.com. You can see it there. Let me show you this little clip. It's just 1 minute long. So,
and with no caffeine in my system. Then I downed just one drink. Now my second MRI. This was my brain before caffeine. This was after. The difference was remarkable.
It's like a 40% drop in the blood flow to your brain. So that's a lot.
So before caffeine, with caffeine, the blood flow to my brain dropped about 40%.
40%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's from ABC News. You know, it's not like I made that video or anything. So as you can see, the drop is very significant. 40% less blood flow to your brain, just one drink that has caffeine. So, and especially the part of your brain that gets the least blood is called the frontal lobe, where you have your judgment, where you have your ability to differentiate between right and wrong. Oh, it goes to the rest of the body. You know? So, it still is there. You know, you don't bleed or anything, but it's not going to the brain. You know? So, that's why you also increase the risk of dementia and so forth long term. There's a hand there. Has a preventive. Let me tell you the principle. The principle is people like to hear good news about their bad habits. So I saw that study. And at the same time, another study showed that caffeine increased the risk of dementia. The sample, the amount of people that were in the one that had the beneficial effect was small. The one that was showing that was harmful, it was much more people. Yet, you didn't hear in the news about this other one. You just hear about this other little one because people like to hear good news about their bad habits. Okay? So, not only coffee has that effect, also tea. You know, black and green tea. Okay. Let me tell you this about green tea. I saw this also in Africa when I was there. Green tea has a beautiful color. The plant of the green tea has this beautiful green. From far off, you can see that. And you can see these ladies, the ones that work those fields. The tea, the plant of the green tea has a special defense mechanism. When that plant feels that it is being injured, it secretes all these toxic substances. So when the animal is eating it, it says, this tastes really bad. I'm going to go and find another plant to eat. So when they are harvesting this green tea, you can see that in Africa, the ladies have these sticks and they hit the plant before they harvest the tea. Now, an animal that has less IQ than us figures out that this is not good for him, isn't it? And goes and finds something else. But what do humans do? They add some sugar and they add some cream to try to hide that bitter taste, and then they drink it, So, not the best thing to be drinking around. Again, not because it's popular, that means that it's good for you. Be careful. Also, Coca-Colas, any type of colas also have caffeine, will have that negative effect on the blood vessels in your joints. Nicotine also has that effect of closing up your blood vessels. So, as we mentioned, anytime the blood vessels are closing up, the nurture of that cartilage cannot take place. And you may say, well, I'm young, nothing happened to me. Well, keep doing this for 20, 30 years, and then you will start seeing the negative effects. So we know that things that help vasorelax, to relax those blood vessels, include a plant-based diet, tomatoes, monounsaturated fats such as the olive oil, things that are rich in antioxidants such as vitamin E. You find lots of this among nuts. Any type of nuts have this property. Zinc and copper, which you find richly among legumes, okay? Your lentils, your beans, your garbanzos, and so forth. And as we mentioned, things that have negative effect on your blood vessel so that it closes up: cholesterol, salt, sugar, and excess calories. Also things that have slow transition period. Transition period is the time that you count from the food coming here and coming out. That is what is called transition food. So things that are high in fat and low in fiber have high transition foods. It says, all we eat is fish. Fish has no fiber. We're all constipated. That's why we walk funny. So, the reason why is that food stays too long in your big intestine. And that creates an overgrowth of bacteria. And when that overgrowth of bacteria takes place, that creates chronic inflammation in the body, and that affects blood vessels, that stimulates the plaque buildup, and that stimulates the relief effect. So you get the three bad side effects of that. And that has to do with the fact that excess bacteria starts generating products that create signaling. It starts sending signals all over the body to start creating like that. So among those things that slow down that transition period include meat, fast foods, any type of refined foods, fried foods, donuts, greasy food, okay? And also food that you eat too late at night. This is a big problem for many people, So you need to make sure that most of your calorie come earlier in the day and not in the evening. Because if you're going to bed with food in your system, you stimulate that bacterial growth. So, what we need to do, we need to make sure that we are eating good amounts of fiber. How much fiber should we be eating? 24 or more grams a day. So, you don't have to worry about that number if you're eating a real plant-based food. Okay. Then you're eating that amount and much more. So things like fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes. Also, having the wrong types of thoughts can have a negative effect on your digestive system, even at the level of causing constipation and so forth. So, things that create plaque, this is how the plaque advances in your blood vessels. As we said, if there is closure of those vessels, the blood cannot flow correctly there, the cartilage cannot get nourished, and those products of waste cannot get rid of the body. So, things that create that type of effect are things high in cholesterol. Things like milk and eggs, ice cream, pancake mixes, and margarines and fried foods. In this study, Dr. Essenstiel, whom I'm co-author with him in the book Rethink Food, was showing how these are the arteries, how they're supposed to keep this diameter, and suddenly it closes up because there's a big plaque here. He did a study that showed that this can open up. What did he do with that? They were doing a diet that was vegetarian, consisted of grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits, and low in fat. And this is what happened. After 32 months of following that diet, the blood vessels started to open up. So, make sure that you're eating that type of diet. Not only is good for your cartilage, it's good to decrease the risk of stroke, hypertension, diabetes, and many other things. So, in closure, what did we learn? We learned that we need to have good blood flow to have good cartilage. We also learned that the bad type of diet will have a negative effect on your arteries. And we also learned that we need to eat an unrefined plant-based diet. And we need to substitute our normal food pyramid, take away that dairy, take away that fat, add soy products, add nuts, and then we're ready to go. So, we need to make sure that we're eating a good amount of good fuel. So, you can eat breads and cereals and pasta as long as they are the whole grain type of them. Okay. So, when you see the nutrition on refined bread, like white bread, and whole wheat bread, you can see the decrease in nutrition in many key nutrients. So, don't waste your money. When you eat that type of white bread, you are actually getting less nutrition. Also, whole wheat bread has been documented to reduce the risk of heart disease. Okay. And there are so many options in the market, such as oats or 10-grain cereal, shredded wheat, and many other good options if we look for them. Brown rice, wild rice, whole wheat pasta, and so forth. So, when you eat your fruit, don't make it juice, don't can it, don't do these things. Eat it, the fruit and only the fruit. Okay. And the vegetables, make sure that you don't end up frying them and ruin them, Eat them in their usual good states. And here is very interesting. The more vegetables you eat, the more you reduce the probability of dying at midlife. Very interesting study. And also, it applies to males. And this other study, the more fruits and vegetables that you eat, the less your risk of ending up with a stroke. Tremendously disabling disease, isn't it? Have you ever seen somebody with a stroke? And make sure that your nuts are real nuts, not with all the oil and all the salt, but nice, wholesome type of nuts. And as we mentioned, soy products have very good properties. So another time that we talk more about that. So basically what we need to do, we need to follow the Bible's diet. Which one was that? Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food, and you will eat the plants of the field. And Ministry of Healing, Council Diet and Food says, grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most helpful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulated diet. See, my undergraduate was computer science. And when I finished my undergraduate, I finished probably around 18 in the group ranking. But you know, I learned about the plant-based diets and the vegan diet, and I applied in my life. And this time when I went to medical school with this type of diet, the Lord blessed me and I actually graduated first place in my class. My brain had changed as a result of switching my diet. So why wouldn't you want to see this in you? So try it out and see the advantages. So, as we started, we finish, we need good diet, exercise, and water, and that will nourish our cartilage, and that will, number one, prevent the problem, and if the problem has already started, that's going to help improve some. There's some limit to it, you know. Some cartilage have been damaged so much that unfortunately replacement is going to be the option. But there are some that are still in the process, and by losing the weight and changing the diet and drinking the water and doing the exercise, that actually can improve that cartilage health. Well, thank you very much